Hey! Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Wildlands Zoo, where we are picking up where we left off and finishing our Asiatic crossroads building. Last episode, if you remember, we put in the Bengal tiger into his massive outdoor habitat. We touched a little bit on the building then, did his interior. Now we need to fill out all of this extra space that we've got. Now before I get into too much of a ramble about the challenges I've had with this one, let's go. So welcome back to our original, very modern sort of glass building. I think I commented last time and pointed out it looks a little bit like a swimming pool. So to get away from that, we're going to start off by building more glass, because apparently that's how we do things around here. Now, this building originally, when I first built it, was intended to be for the Komodo dragon. So the actual sizing of everything that we've built in here was built around the idea that we were going to need all this extra space for the Komodo dragon to live in. About halfway through building the actual building, though, it kind of dawned on me that the Komodo dragon has got no relation to the Bengal tiger, and it may not make that much sense having them share a building. So I've changed it. Instead, we're going to go for the Chinese Pangolin, which, for those of you aware, is tiny. So we're going to make this giant habitat for our very small pangolin. I'm not too upset about that. It's nice that they've got all this extra room, but it does mean we've got a lot of space to cover. Now on screen here you can see me slowly building up this tank. I had originally come up with an idea of building a giant burrow that the pangolin could walk into. However, upon building it, I completely forgot that the keepers needed to walk through it, so it ended up being absolutely huge, and yeah, let's just say that didn't last. So I flattened it all out, and instead we're going to go with a bit of that broken temple aesthetic that we used on the outside with the tiger. The complications of that meant that this took so long to build, and that is why you're getting my husky morning voice as your narrator for the day, because we ran out of time to get it all done in time for the normal upload schedule. But fear not, short of some deeper dulcet tones, everything else is complete. Now, I'm not going to completely bore you by going over how we built these walls again, because we did that last episode. If you want to see it, go check that one out. But long story short, the only difference this time is I'm using the painted temple brick, and that is because a bit further down the line, I can change these to a much darker colour. The idea being, they're inside, we want them to look a little bit more disused, less bleached by the sun. Also, I just didn't want it to all look the same. I get into this habit of making areas very thematic, but at the same time, too much like each other. I mean, I'm rambling, but I know what I mean. Now equally, as I mentioned, we've got all this extra space that we now don't need. So I'm going to make a couple of guest parts in this. So on this side of the habitat, we're going to have a covering for where the tiger swimming pool viewing window is there on the right. And also then we've got a little look through into the pangolin habitat from here. I didn't want to completely cover it up because one of the biggest benefits of this building's design is all that light flying everywhere. So rather than giving it a roof, we're going to make a bit of a broken roof to suggest, oh, there used to be one, but it fell in. And then we can fill that with planting later on. Now, what I think the entire building here has taught me over the last couple of episodes is that I really need to go into these things with a bit more of a plan. I normally do plan them out way ahead of time before building them. But because I threw the book out the window on this one quite early on, it has meant that every decision following that has been questioned and changed, and just generally takes a little bit longer. The final result is really good, but is it as good as it could have been if I had planned it out on paper and stuck to that plan? We don't really know. But it is something to consider that when you're building your own builds, especially when you're doing an entire zoo like this, planning is probably the most important part of it, and it's something that going forward to finish off Wildlands, but even into the next couple of projects, we are going to do a little bit more. I'm going to spend a lot more time designing it out, drawing it out, getting it all down set before we even jump into Planet Zoo. I am interested though in terms of what your way of building in the game is. Do you just jump in and start building and see where it takes you? That's sort of what we ended up doing here. Or do you plan it all out first and then follow a guide? Let me know in the comments below. I'd be very interested to sort of see the deviation on that, see how many do what. Back to the build, however, we are going to start decorating up, and I'm going to use the mossy stone again, a bit like we did outside, but now that we're in a little bit of a smaller area, we can get a little bit more detailed. So using these trims just to sink it into the stone, it looks so good at the end. And you'll see that in the final cinematics where we've got this wonderful sort of decorative area. I've also built a bit of a backstage viewing bit, and that's because we're going to do a little bit off the cuff. I'm not going to let go of that burrow idea, but we'll come around to that very shortly. Back inside the habitat though, we're going to make another temple wall, this time for the backdrop. And I also felt it was a little bit too high, so what I am going to do is add on a little bit of a faux roof using the clay bricks, but then I'm going to make a second level. And this will just bring everything down. And again, we've got to remember the pangolins are really small. So what we don't want is all of this height so that when the guests come in, they're just looking up, because you'll never see the pangolin. So we're going to sort of force their viewpoint downwards, make them look at the floor a bit more, and then obviously they will see the pangolins a little bit better. Now the intention with every build is for it to look good, but the other intention here is that we want this to look fake. So we're going to go a little bit over dramatized on some of the features. We're knocking a couple of holes in the ceiling so that I can stretch some big trees growing through them. In reality, none of this would really ever last that long, but because it's an exhibit, because it's something that is meant to take people out of the surrounding setting, we can go a little bit, what I would probably term it as Disney-fied, but you get what I mean. It's sort of like fake. Now to make those trees, we're going to use the faux tree with the roots. We're not going to worry too much about how it looks at the top, because again, the idea is that you would not be looking at the top, you'd be looking at the bottom. So we're going to bulk them out with some roots, make them look nice and big. Essentially, we're making very big straggler fig trees, but if you've seen any previous videos where we've used those, you'll know that the straggler fig tree roots don't play well with animal hitboxes, whereas the faux trees do. Just to add a bit of realism in there, we're also going to make some wooden support beams that hold up the stone roof, and then with our temple bit complete, we can jump onto the rest of the habitat. Now, there was a lot of gaps created because we've got a path going all the way around. It just raised this sort of challenge of how do we get water and how do we get ground into the habitat. Now, unfortunately, a lot of that involves pushing the path up against the edge of the habitat and getting these very strong lines. So we're going to cover them in with some rocks. I also have gone in and put in some water, but you'll find there's a lot of holes there. So we're going to cover those up as well while we're at it. Now, you may have noticed that at the start of the video, I didn't beg you for your likes, your comments, and your subscribes, and that's because I would like you to get at least a little bit of value out of the video before I start shilling for YouTube. However, YouTubers got a YouTube, and it's at this point I need to ask you for some help. Very simply, if you are enjoying this video, if it is giving you a modicum of entertainment, don't forget to tippy tap that like button. If you're not subscribed and you would like to see more, please make sure you subscribe down below. And today, we don't really have an emoji for you, so instead I'd like you to wow me with your creativity and show me what you think is a suitable emoji for the Chinese pangolin down in the comments below, all for the sake of engagement. And with that part complete, let's get back to the video. Now in the background here, I'm popping together some limestone squares. We're going to use that painting technique we used outside, just on the inside as well. You'll see that in the ending cinematics, but it was just to decorate up the wall a bit. While we're building out some guest areas, we're also going to pop down a load of benches. We still have quite a big building to fill. It seems right we'd have somewhere to sit and just relax. We've got all these big glass walls around you. Seems like a nice area. You could probably have some lunch. And with lunch in mind, we're also going to bring in a little bit of an area for drinks and snack machines. These are just going to go, again, just to decorate up the wall, but we're going to bring them back into the setting a little bit by building a bit of a temple stone covering around them just to house them in a bit. Now, with that bit done, it's time to move on to the planting. And we're going to start with a couple of feature trees, just one or two. Going to sink them into the ground, make sure they don't go through the ceiling. And I don't mind if these poke through the netting a little bit. The idea being, of course, that they would grow out. And then once we've done that, we can start just adding in all of the little detail pieces. Again, the thought process with this, because the pangolins are quite small, we are going to put down a lot of lower level planting. We're going to have leaves, we're going to have bushes, we're going to have shrubs. We want to keep the guest's attention low down, so the detailing on the ground is a lot more interesting than the detailing in the air. Now to decorate up the faux trees just a little bit, we're going to use the basket ferns. These are wonderful for doing this. And then we're going to just cover most of the ground level with a lot of bracken. We can get away with making a couple of areas of this habitat inaccessible because it is far too big for the pangolin itself. So the normal issues that you get with things like the leaf coverage affecting traversability is less of a concern. And ironically, and I don't know how I've done it or whether Frontier have made a change in the background, but these leaves do not affect their traversability. You put an elephant in here, it won't walk across the leaves. It's incredibly frustrating, but I'm glad it worked out. On the outer areas, again, we don't really want to cover up too much of the glass, so we're just going to go fairly low and green with our decoration. I did want to block off one sight line though, just so it forced people to move around. So I used the wonderful salt cedar tree here, and that just adds a nice little pop of colour. We also popped a couple of these up on the surrounding areas of the habitat, just to give it a bit more of an attractive look. And as you can see here, it's looking pretty good. Hitting that home stretch now, we're going to jump on into the backstage and get that sorted. Now again, because we had originally made this building for a bigger animal, the backstage area is also bigger than we need. To combat that, we are going to build them a burrow. Going along the lines of going for that very authentic, fake, oh my god, zoos do everything over the top type of look, we're going to make a massive burrow. But at least it's only in a small area. So we're going to start off using the stalactites and the faux trees just to make a framework. We're going to go around and cover them. And then inside, I'm going to drag the floor up through the concrete base that we've put in. And this is just going to be where the keepers will have put down some dirt and some sand. And then we're going to cover that over with some bedding material as well, where we get these very strong, hard lines around the edges. We're going to go over and just cover in decals to make it look like it's just more of a mud pile. And that kind of tidies everything up to give us a nice little bedding area inside our faux burrow. And then, so the outside looks at least a little bit neater, we're going to go and cover it in a concrete box. So this will just be the outer walls that the material has been attached to. Finishing off, we're going to pop them in a couple of red lights. We've got the one-way glass there, so this will just help them be seen from the outside. Carrying on with the lighting theme, we're going to jump into the main habitat and just run a pole all the way across the middle of it. This is the wonder of building things inside, is you can get away with things like this. Now this one doesn't really need these lights, but I do like the idea of setting up these little spotlights on this rail and creating artificial pools of sunlight in amongst this forest scene that we're creating. And it also makes everything else look a little bit darker, which is great. I'm also going to take the opportunity to throw down some education boards, both for the pangolin and for the Bengal tiger. So we're going to pop them around. That's going to fill up a bit of the wall, but just to make sure that we don't have too many flat areas, I'm going to grab some of those posters from Nexus Mods, wonderful poster pack this, and we're going to pop some of them in as well. Now to shrink down the backstage just a little bit, we're going to make a rudimentary barrier out of the metal poles, and then we're also going to make a concrete wall running along the bottom of it. The pangolin being quite small, I've not got to worry about him climbing out of here, so we're kind of good to not go too much glass. And then I've made this sort of storage area at the back here, which we can then fill in with crates and boxes and hay bales and just a load of junk. And it's a great way of just slimming down that area so that we don't need to just have big empty spaces, or by cutting it off with the wall, which seems a little bit boring. To finish off, I grabbed a sink from the entrance to the zoo, and we're just going to make a little scene with a bucket here. And then, as always, it wouldn't be a backstage without multiple hooks on the wall with shovels and brooms. And with that, everything's about complete. Let's have a look at the pretty pictures. So, bit of an interesting one this week, bit of a twist in how it was going to turn out. I didn't know where we were going to finish, and I'm happy with it. I mean, I hope you think it's pretty good, right? Tell me if it's bad. You tell me, right? You tell me. But yeah, it's turned out okay. I'm happy with it. It fills the building up. I could probably have done many different exhibits built into the back wall, but we've kind of done an insect house, and it feels a bit weird to have two, so yeah, I'm not going to do that. The other part of this is I'm starting to, and you may have noticed, although I think I edited most of them out, I am starting to find that the FPS in the zoo is starting to become a bit of an issue. It's self-inflicted. I've not exactly held back on how many objects I'm using, so we do have to keep that in mind as we go forwards. It's very much looking like we are in the final straight for Wildlands Zoo. I do want to get Coltham House in, so that may be our next project. I also want to finish off our Asia garden just behind this building so we can open it up to the guests. But equally, we've got Africa and Oceania still to do. So a good couple of episodes left, but I do think by midway through this year, we may be complete and we need to look to future horizons, whether that be Planet Zoo or something else. Interested in all your thoughts and comments, please don't forget to pop them down below. If you've not yet thought up of an emoji for this week's engagement emoji, please pop it down in the comments. Surprise me with your skill. If you liked today's video, don't forget to tippy tap that like button. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. It's wonderful. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time. Goodbye.